can you tell me a little bit about then the transformation? So you guys are having dinner, you're dialoguing a little bit. How did it go from that set of conversations? Who else got involved? And then how did it get to like the co-founding of SEPI as a society?
I mean, basically what Paul and I did is we compiled a list of people who we knew within our orientation who might be interested in broadening their point of view. And you have to remember, this was before the internet, so everything was paper and pencil.
Right.
It's amazing that we were able to do all of that without the internet, but we prevailed. And then I remember I visited with Hans Strupp, because he was one of the people from a psychoanalytic camp. And he and I had been dialoguing because he was coming to the behavior therapy meetings because he was very much empirically oriented and he wanted to see the kind of research that was being done.
Right.
So we developed a dialogue and I then spent a weekend at his place and we discussed at length. And I remember I stayed over and I was sitting on the bed ready to go to sleep and we were chatting. And then he said, Marv, you're going to need more than just a list of names to make this work. That it would be a good idea to start some kind of organization.
Okay.
So that provided a transition. Then Paul and I were discussing that. And we were discussing organizations, and organizations we've known and participated in didn't necessarily thrill us all that much. It's like, oh my God, let's form something that's informal, but brings people together. And let's do it in a very unusual way. Let's have a committee run it, a steering committee of people, and use this as a way of, not getting too much bureaucracy involved.
Right.
And we did that for a number of years, and it worked for a number of years.
And the society, was it like officially founded like in 1985 or 83? I can't quite remember. It's in that ballpark of 1985 or so?
Earlier, yeah.
Was it earlier?
My recollection is that our first actual meeting may have been 85, which was in Annapolis, Maryland. But we had the organization existed starting in 83.
Yeah.
But we didn't actually have the meeting, first meeting.
Yes, and then we had a newsletter that Paul and I, did we co-edit it at the time?
Yeah, we did. Right,
we did. And it was this very low-tech mimeographed newsletter, and we would put in information and send it to these people. So we sent the newsletter out, even asking what could a good name be for our organization.
Okay, yeah.
So we had the newsletter and an informal group before we had a quote formal organization. And then the formal organization was really very informal for a long period of time until more recent years when we've done things like elected offices and lots of committees and things like that.
Right. And just for folks listening, it's the Society for the Exploration of Psychotherapy Integration. And you guys framed it precisely that way so that it was basically an invitation from people from various orientations to come together and begin the dialogue about the crossbreeding, integrative, eclectic, whatever it was in relation to give it that flexibility, fluidity, and invitation from a wide variety of different domains.
Right, and that we were aware that adding that word exploration made it hard to pronounce. Just exploration of psychotherapy integration is a mouthful, which is why SEPI is a godsend as a referring to it. But we put it in because among the early people who were actually most active in SEPI in the earliest years were people who, to their great credit, were participating with us, even though they were skeptics about integration.
Mm-hmm.
They were interested enough to come and dialogue with us. They were not converts, as it were, to integration. So that word exploration provided a broad enough umbrella that they could feel welcome.
Right. The spirit of the SEPI meetings was very, very different from any other meetings that most of us ever attended.
Right.
Other meetings where you sit down with a panel with somebody from other points of view, and your goal on the panel was to convince the other person that they were wrong and you were right. The goal of our meetings was to learn from each other. So the underlying guideline is get together and play nice.
Mm-hmm. So it's a dialogos.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes, we did this back in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Play nice. And some of the best meetings where I learned the most was from audience participation. Mm-hmm. And we do have recordings of this somewhere on our website. So hopefully you'll give the commercial toward the end of how people can join SEPI and find the website. But we do have audio recordings of some of this stuff. I don't know if it's all been converted to the new website or not, but they exist somewhere. So we record it.
I will put in the show notes in particular where the SEPI links and where people can join and all of that good stuff.
Right.
Absolutely. So we can. What was the reception? I mean, did it sort of catch fire? Was it feel like you were going uphill? How did the field kind of respond? What's your sense looking back how the field responded to this initiative?
Well, I think for me, in a way, the biggest surprise, just because I hadn't really thought about it yet, was the number of people from other countries who became involved. Because I think we first had a kind of what retrospectively seems like a very narrow vision of basically a North American organization. You know, we really had we thought it was an organization devoted to taking off your blinders, theoretically, but we still had, in a way, geographical blinders. And fortunately, somehow, despite our really not initiating that as much as we should have in retrospect, somehow people from around the world learned about it, became part of it, and it's now truly an international organization. And I think Marv and I and many SEPI members have made wonderful, enduring relationships around the world through SEPI. But that was, for me, one big surprise. I think on the other hand, where it has remained an oddly small membership in some way is that an enormous portion of therapists answer inquiries indicating that they are integrative or eclectic in orientation. Yet there's this sort of hidden underbelly to their identities where they still identify with an orientation, and that's the organization they belong to. And I think we really, in a way, one of the things SEPI still needs is to draw in more of the integrative therapists around the world who know they're integrative, but somehow still think of, I should belong to a behavior therapy association or a psychoanalytic association or a humanistic association, but don't think about joining SEPI. And I think we have room for growth in that respect.
Right. And certainly, as you mentioned before, Stan Mess's notion of assimilative integration, where you keep your identity, but you are open to other things that may benefit your clinical intervention.